Hello and welcome to the Living Your Best Life webinar series presented by the Huntsman World Senior Games. This is a monthly webinar that covers a wide variety of topics that are designed to help you live your best life. My name is Kyle Case, and I have the pleasure of serving as the Chief Executive Officer of the Huntsman World Senior Games. Emily Perry has been studying and teaching yoga for nearly 2 decades and currently works as the Director of Yoga Studies at Utah State University. Emily loves sharing the incredible benefits of yoga and would like to share some practices that center on breathwork, mindfulness, as well as moving meditation. These practices are easy to learn, they're accessible to anyone, and Emily says they'll leave you feeling great. Hello, Emily, welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm very, very happy to be here.
We're so excited to have you here and to learn a little bit from you. Yoga, I will, in full disclosure, I will say that it is not a practice that I am very good at or that I've learned to love yet. So I want to get that out there, but I'm at the same time very interested in learning more about it and interested and excited to learn from you. I'll tell you, yoga has become much more accepted and a lot more people are practicing it now. But one of the things that comes to my mind when I think of yoga, and I think that this happens to many people, if not most, at least many people, and that is they envision, a yogi on a pole in India that has contorted themselves into, some kind of a pretzel, and it feels a little intimidating. What do you think? Number one, is it intimidating? And if it isn't, how do we get past that mentally?
So it can be intimidating if the only exposure you have to yoga is, these images of people doing crazy things.
What I just described, right?
and headstands and all of that sort of thing. But in reality, yoga can be done by anybody. If you are breathing, you can do yoga. It's really,
Okay.
It's a practice of breath. It's a practice of feeling. It's a practice of sort of becoming the witness of your experience, whether that's an emotional experience, a physical experience, or a thought. And the very best way to sort of get past any nervousness about yoga is to just give it a try. So that's what we're going to do today.
I love it. I love it. I'm looking forward to it. Without any further ado, we're going to turn the time over to Emily and learn what she has to share with us. Again, if you have questions, don't hesitate to drop those in the Q&A box or in the comment section. We'll accumulate the questions and answer them at the end of the presentation. And for now, we'll turn the time over to Emily. Thanks, Emily.
Great. Thank you so much. Okay, so I am going to be doing a little bit of chair yoga with you. I'm going to pin myself on the screen so that I can see. So if you're going to practice along, I'm going to have you sit in a chair. I'm going to hop up into my chair. I'm actually sitting on the floor right now. And so what we're going to do today is start with movement. So one of the main practices that we are exposed to in the yoga practice is the movement practice. And the reason for this is because it gives us something to pay attention to. So all of these yoga practices are really sort of designed to help get us out of habitual thinking patterns that can often keep us sort of stuck or limited. Sometimes those thinking patterns can become even harmful or negative. And then that in turn kind of affects the way that we feel. Everything we think has sort of an emotional reaction. And then those emotional reactions have a physical reaction. So we're going to kind of reverse all of that. We're going to start with the physical practice. In this way, it gives you a felt sensation of movement, of your body moving. And then we're going to move into just a brief breathwork practice. And again, we'll talk a little bit more about it once we get there, but the breath work practice just brings us into relationship with our breath in a way that might, again, sort of draw some of our attention away from the constant dialogue that's going on inside of our heads. So I'm hoping that what you'll get out of this is a little bit of reprieve from the mind. And after we do our movement and then we'll do our breath, I'll take you through a little mindfulness practice, and hopefully we can slip into a little bit of a meditative state. Okay. So if you're joining me, I'm going to invite you to sit sort of toward the edge of your chair. So you're going to kind of sit toward the edge so that you can sit really nice and tall. So you're sitting nice and tall right on your seat. I want you to kind of think about the natural curves of your spine, how they lengthen up, and they have like a little bit, I'm going to turn sideways so you can see our spine has a little bit of an inward curve. And then just to kind of keep the chest nice and open so that when we incorporate the breath, it'll be accessible to us. So take a comfortable seat, feet planted on the floor. I encourage shoes off if you don't mind, or if you're in a place where you can do that. It's nice to always kind of feel the feet against the floor. It's a nice grounding exercise. We're going to start by just taking a moment to feel our breath. So I'm going to invite you to close your eyes. Maybe just take a couple of nice, deep cleansing breaths. And if it feels good to you, you might even want to sort of sigh it out. So you could even open your mouth, sort of sigh it out. Do that 2 or 3 times, almost as if you're just sort of cleansing out anything you no longer need, any negative thoughts, any busyness. And just invite your awareness to sort of land right here in this space. Once you've taken a couple of nice deep cleansing breaths, just fall into the natural pattern of your breath. And just feel how it feels as it draws in through your nose or your mouth. Feel the chest or the belly rise and fall. See if you can follow the breath all the way to the very bottom of your exhale, where there might be a little tiny pause, a little quiet. And then follow your breath to the very top of your inhale, where there's also a tiny little pause, a little quiet right before it turns around. Good. Now go ahead and open your eyes. And I'm going to invite you to keep kind of bringing your awareness back to your breath throughout the movement practice. So we're going to start with our hands. So go ahead and take your hands up, make a fist. And we're just going to work with the joints of the hands and some mobility. So with a fist, squeeze a little bit. And then go into this sort of a claw shape. And then I'm going to have you spread your hands out nice and wide. Go back into a little claw and then back into a fist. We're going to do that again. So from fist to claw to spread, back to the claw and back to the fist. One more time. Back to the claw, extend and spread, feeling all of those little tiny muscles in your hands, the movement, all the sensation. And then just kind of relax, wiggle your fingers out, see what you can feel, maybe flip it around a couple times. And then I'm going to have you hold your hands together, interlace your fingers, and we're just going to roll the wrists. So we're just going to roll it out. You might have a little bit of popping and cracking. So anytime you have an experience inside of the body, as long as it's not harmful or painful, go ahead and reverse your direction. I just want you to observe it with fascination, like, what an incredible physical form that we live in. It ages, it changes, it moves, it rests, it heals itself. And it's just really such a miraculous thing. So go ahead and release that for a minute. Now we're going to do the same thing with our feet. Well, we won't do all the same things, but we're just going to create some mobility in the foot. You won't be able to see my feet, but just pick up one foot and point the toe You're just pointing the toe like you're going to dab a dot on the floor with your big toe, and then go ahead and flex your foot, reach out through the heel. Maybe you'll feel some sensation up the back of your leg into your calf muscle. Go back into the point and back into the flex, and then we're just going to roll it out. So it's just this nice big circular rolling motion. Again, you might feel some little cracks and pops, little sensations there. Go ahead and reverse it. And as long as it's not painful, just observe it with curiosity. And then go ahead and place that foot down. Let's go to the second side. Start with a nice plantar pointed foot, and then flex, moving into flexion, back into the point, and back into flexion. And then we're going to roll it out again. And again, just feeling all of the different sensations of your foot. Now, what's going on with your breathing here? Have you stopped breathing? See if you can come back to it. And then go ahead and put that foot back down. Now we're going to work into the hips just a little bit. So again, sitting up nice and tall, we're right on top of those sit bones that kind of support the back side. Pick up your knee, doesn't matter which one you start with. Interlace your fingers around your shin. Now, if you need a strap or a necktie or something, you can place that around your knee instead. And as you're sitting up nice and tall, gently push your knee into your hands. So what this is doing here is it's creating a little bit of stability for the joint so that we're not just stretching or pulling or moving on unstabilized joints. So pushing the knee into the hands will give you some stability, and then we're just going to rock from side to side. And then if you've got the mobility, go ahead and do some circles. It's okay to lean back a little bit to give yourself some space. But again, just feel the motion of the hip joint. Wonderful hip joint mobility. Let's rotate it around and then go ahead and place that leg down. We're going to take the second side again, establish your posture, sit up nice and tall, pick it up, interlace or use a belt or strap. Gently push your shin or your knee into your hands or into your strap. And then bring it in maybe just a little bit more, add some side to side movement. And then we're going to roll it out. And again, just observing all of those sensations with curiosity. Maybe you even offer a little gratitude to your body for what it's able to do. And then go ahead and place that down. Okay, we're going to go to the first leg again. So pick it up again. This time, just grab hold of your foot and just gently cross it over your thigh. Now, if it's okay if your knee is way up high, if that's the case, I'm going to have you just support that knee with your hands. So just kind of give it a little hug so that you've got some support there. Otherwise, if it lays down comfortably, you can go ahead and just let it sort of lay flat. Now, to add the stability in this pose, we always want to put some stability into our mobility. So we're going to flex this top foot just a little bit, and then gently push your ankle down against your thigh. And then you're going to push it down and then almost feel like you're going to pull your heel toward you, but it's not going anywhere. So what you feel here is this sense of muscular stability. You might feel some more sensation in your hip, a little bit of muscular integration right there. That's all really good. So that then we feel a little bit protected as we start to move a little bit more deep into the stretch. Now you might just stay right here. Spine is straight up. Or if you have a little bit more space to work with, you can hinge forward at the hip creases. I'm going to turn sideways so that you can see what that looks like. So rather than rounding the back, you're going to sit up tall and then just hinge just a teensy bit or as much as you're able. Now, as you're holding here, this is a little bit more of an intense stretch, at least it is for me. So I'm going to really draw back into my breath. And as I breathe, I'm going to almost imagine that exhale breath is carrying away whatever tension is being held in my hip, whatever tension is being held in my body. I'm going to be mindful about where I might have unconscious tension in my body, such as my jaw, the little wrinkles between the eyebrows. See if you can soften those areas. Go ahead and release. And if you want, if it feels good, just kind of do another little roll. See how it feels. And then we're going to take the second side. So let's go ahead and draw the second knee up. Gently support as you take it across, kind of assess the situation first. So we're always asking our body permission. That's why we like to move nice and slow. So you can see on this side, for me, my left hip is a little bit tight. So my knee is up a little, up at an angle. I'm going to support it just a little with my hands. At the same time, flex the foot, press the heel down, and then gently pull the heel toward you, but not actually moving it. We're just adding the stability. And then if you have the space in your body to lean a little, you can hinge forward. Again, we're not rounding our spine. We're just hinging at those hip creases, coming a little bit deeper into the stretch. And then find your breath here. Nice long exhale breaths. You're just carrying away whatever tension has been trapped inside of your body. And after each long exhale breath, you should have a little bit more space for a nice deep inhale breath. Again, notice if you're holding tension in your shoulders or your neck or your jaw. Good, and then go ahead and release. Come on out of there. All right, so now we're going to kind of work up into our spine a little bit. Again, I'm going to turn sideways so that you can see a little bit better. This one's called cat-cow. I haven't been giving you the names of these poses, but I'll start giving them to you. Hold on to your knees. And we're just going to take a nice full, we're going to coordinate our breath with this movement. So as you inhale, we're going to bring the chest forward and up. You can gently pull against your knees. And then exhale from the lower belly and feel how that exhale breath draws the belly back and rocks you back into, this is the cat pose. Drop your chin, inhale back up into cow pose. Breathing all the way to the very top of your collarbones. Bring that breath all the way to the top. Exhale all the way down. Again, inhale, rise up. And exhale, release down. Okay, now come back into that neutral spine or that natural curve. Now I'm going to stay turning to my side because I'm going to invite you to also turn to your side for our next posture. If you're on a couch and you don't have an edge, that's okay. You can keep your knees forward and I'll just give you an alternative for that. So you'll sit up nice and tall. And then you're just going to turn your body to the back of your chair. You can hold on to the back side and then take a nice full inhale breath to sit up tall. And as you exhale, gently move your body into a twist. Now, as you're exhaling, the abdominal muscles sort of contract and wrap around your spine, which gives you some support and stability as you're moving into the twist. But I want you to really think of this twist as not something that you're forcing your body into. You're simply breathing into the twist. So you go to the very edge of easy movement, and then you breathe the rest of the way. Okay, so it's an inhale to lengthen and an exhale to go just a teensy bit deeper, only if it feels accessible to you. We're not forcing it. Now, you stay in the twist. For those of you that are sitting on a couch, you don't have the sides, you can keep your knees forward and just hold the side of your couch, or you can just turn to your side and use something, you know, to kind of give you some leverage. So it's perfectly fine to do this on the couch as well. Okay, now on your next inhale breath, we're going to unwind and then turn back around. And we're going to go right over to the second side. Okay. Again, establish that nice long spine. As you're ready, exhale to turn to the back of your chair. Hang on with your hands. Finish off that exhale. Feel those muscles maybe engage around the spine. Stay in the twist as you inhale, lengthen. Imagine getting a little bit of space between each one of your vertebrae. And then exhale again. Never, never forcing, just breathing into it. Your breath is such an incredible tool to help bring your body into position. So stay with your breath. And then go ahead and release as you inhale and bring your legs back around to the front of your seat again. Okay, so now we're going to do a little forward bend. So we're just going to forward bend right over the thighs. So just slide your hands down your legs and just sort of drape yourself over your thighs. You can let your head go. Now I'm going to talk to you while you're doing this. And as you drape your body into that position, I want you to almost feel like you are inhaling into your back body. So you're inhaling to expand the back body. And as you exhale, draw the belly back, especially if it feels like the belly's sort of in the way. And you're always welcome to come up and rest on your elbows if it's uncomfortable to fold all the way over your thighs. But be mindful that there's no tension in your neck, no tension in the back of your head. So let your head hang as much as it's comfortable for you. If you happen to have low or high blood pressure, you might do better just resting on the elbows. You can still get all the benefits of breathing into the back body and getting that little bit of forward flexion in the spine. So just a couple more breaths here. Now we're going to slowly come up so that we don't get lightheaded. Come up, land on your elbows. Just keep your head steady for a moment here. Just feel, notice how things are feeling. If you feel a little bit lightheaded, I'm going to have you stay for another moment longer. And then when you feel ready, I'll have you come all the way back upright. Really press down into your feet, especially if you're feeling a little bit light in the head. That will help kind of ground you and bring you back into your body. Okay, we're just going to do a little counter pose now, back into a little back bend practice. So I'm going to have you reach behind and just catch the edges of your seat. So I've got my thumbs pointing down, my palms are facing in toward the seat. Now, before you move into this posture, I'm going to have you shrug your shoulders and then draw those shoulders back as far as you can, and then just kind of let those shoulder blades slide down your back so that we clear the clavicle here. We have to clear those collarbones. And then bring your chest forward, so you're arching the spine. Take a nice full breath into the chest, let everything expand. Imagine it's like this big helium balloon that's almost floating you upward. Your throat should feel nice and open. And as you exhale, lean just a little bit more so that exhale breath can kind of feel like it's bringing your shoulder blades onto your back and maybe gently pressing your heart forward just a little. So again, the breathing would be inhale, full chest, exhale, shoulder blades press. So a couple more breaths in this position. And then we're going to just come right back to neutral. Okay, so now we're going to give our shoulders a little bit of attention. That was a little start to the shoulders. Go ahead and pick up one arm, it doesn't matter which side, cross the chest, and then use your other hand to support. So you're going to gently pull that straight arm closer to your body. And then that straight arm is also going to sort of push against the arm that's supporting. Okay, so you create that little bit of stability we talked about. Now be mindful, this shoulder is going to want to creep right up around your ear. So as much as possible, drop that shoulder down. And if it feels better to turn your palm open, then that's fine too, because that creates a little bit of an external rotation in your arm. It will likely feel a little bit better in your shoulder joint. So if this feels kind of pinchy, try that other option. Now remember to breathe, because it's going to feel nice to take nice deep breaths in this stretch. Now, some of you might choose to stay right here. Now we're going to move into a little bit of a pretzel. I know I promised you no pretzels, but this is a little bit like a pretzel. So if you want to join me with this one, you can slide that supporting arm underneath. You're going to kind of cross like this. And then either you can hold the shoulders, you can bring them up and kind of push your arms against each other. Or some of you that have really long arms might wrap all the way around and catch the palms. Okay, this is called eagle arms. Now, we're going to add some stability in this shape as well by pressing the arms against each other. And then if it feels good to you, I'm going to have you just kind of drop those elbows toward your belly so that you can really spread across the shoulder blades. We sometimes get so tight across those shoulder blades. Drop your chin, and then we're going to bring the breath back into it. So we're going to inhale into the upper back, feel the spread of the shoulder blades. And as you exhale, just relax. Relax your eyes, relax your jaw, relax your throat. See if you can wash away some of that unnecessary tension. And we're going to also add just a little bit of movement here. So you can do these great big circles. It should feel really nice. If you're still here, you can still do this. Just a nice supported movement here. Okay, so either one is fine. And then go ahead and release. Come out of that twisty shape and roll your shoulders. Kind of get a little bit of that tension out. And then we're going to take the second side. So take the other arm up. We're going to take it across the chest, support with your other hand. Now, again, externally rotating your arm might feel better for your joint. That would mean palm faces up. And then you can stay here for a little while. This might be the perfect place for you. Or you can take that supporting hand, slide it right underneath, and then any variations, you can stay with your hands separate. You can hold onto your shoulders, or if you're twisty, you can wrap it all the way around, catch the palms, and then drop your elbows, breathe in between your shoulder blades. See if you can find a little bit more space. It's like the breath is sort of exploring new territory inside of the body, carving out new canyons, canyons of space. Let's go ahead and just roll it out. And again, of course, you can be here, still getting the mobility that feels so nice. Okay, now go ahead and release, roll it out a little bit, see how things feel. What we're really doing is we're sort of carving out a new body every time we practice yoga. So now we're just going to bring a little bit of attention and love to our neck. We're going to be very gentle here. So you're just going to drop your chin, make sure that your spine stays as nice and tall as possible. And then we're just going to sort of trace a line, like imagine you've got a little necklace or your neckline. You're going to trace your chin from one side over to the other. Just a really nice gentle movement. You might notice that one side, you can turn your head to one side a little bit more easily than the other. So just be really gentle on the side that's tender. Finish with your chin down, and then we'll come back up to center. Okay, so that concludes our chair yoga. So I hope that that was enjoyable to you. Now we're not done yet. We're gonna move into a couple of other practices. So the next practice that I would like to teach you is a breathwork practice. And the reason that we draw our attention to our breath is because the breath is so closely connected and influenced by our mind. And so this is very obvious to us when we're feeling a lot of stress or a lot of tension or a lot of fear. often the first thing that happens is our breath gets really short and we feel like we only have about this much space to breathe. And it can almost feel a little bit like hyperventilating, or we just can't quite get enough air into our body. So one of the practices that yoga embodies is this practice of calming the breath and sort of bringing a steadiness to the breath, so that if it's, sometimes it can feel impossible to sort of let go of our thoughts, or even sort of ignore our thoughts for a little while we're meditating. But the breath and the evenness of the breath can help with that process. So we're going to start with just working with natural breath, and then I'm going to introduce to you a little breathing technique that may or may not work for you. So just always keep in mind with yoga, if one technique doesn't work, don't worry, there are many, many, many others. So we're going to start with just natural breath, just like we did in the very beginning. So maybe you'll take a couple of nice deep breaths. It is not uncommon to feel a little bit panicky the moment you start thinking about breath, or even unsteady. So many of us have habitual patterning where our breath gets short when we get nervous. So then we start to think of the breath as being a scary thing to approach. If that's the case for you, I'm just going to invite you to just take this practice really slow. And if the breath and the awareness of the breath makes you feel a little bit uneasy, just take extra deep breaths, or, take a moment, pause from the practice. So take a moment here. If it's accessible, just tune into the breath. And as you observe your own breathing pattern, maybe just watch and see if you have a longer inhale breath, or maybe you have a longer exhale breath. Or maybe in general, your breath feels very, very short or shallow. Or maybe it feels extra long and deep. But these are all just observations. There's no right or wrong. It's just being the witness of your experience. Now, as you begin to notice, or you may notice, that your breath eventually sort of settles into a pattern or a rhythm, and I'm going to invite you to sort of just count the breath. Just depending on how quickly you count, you might inhale for 6 counts, exhale for 6 counts, or it could be any variation. But just notice what's the count of your breath. Now, with whatever you observe, I'm going to invite you to try to create an even count. So an even count inhale and an even count exhale, just for a few cycles here. And again, if at any moment it starts to feel uncomfortable, you just come out of the count, you take a deep breath, and you sort of reset. Now I'm going to invite you to go ahead and open your eyes, sort of come back into the space you're in. And hopefully what you noticed in that little, very brief practice is that maybe you had a moment of sort of a quiet mind. And sometimes it feels like those thoughts are still there, but maybe they're just sort of off in the distance a little bit. Maybe they're not just so in front of your face. Maybe they've dissipated just a little bit, not quite so heavy. So I'm going to invite one more breathwork practice into this repertoire. And this one actually has a kind of a fancy name. This is called the Ujjayi breath. And it is sometimes referred to as ocean breath. And you'll see why it kind of sounds like the ocean. So the reason that I like this practice is that it brings more sensory experience to the practice of breath work. So not only are you feeling sort of the sensations of the physical form as your belly and your chest rise and fall, but you can also hear your own breath. And you might also be able to feel it a little bit more in your throat. And then the other interesting thing about the Ujjayi breath, because of the nature of how it's done, it can actually sort of lengthen out your breath even more. So this is how people can start to work on creating a longer count with the breath. So the way that this is done is that I'm going to have you start with your mouth open, and you're going to sort of make a sighing sound. So if you open your mouth, and I don't know if you can hear me very well for this, but you sort of sigh out like this. Another way to think of this is if you were sort of trying to fog a glass window, you would breathe a little heavier, and you can hear the sound of your breath. So notice how your throat feels when you make that sound. And you can practice this again and again. And then see if you can actually do it as you're inhaling as well. So it might feel a little like you're drying out your throat, but we're going to do this with our mouth closed so then it won't dry out your throat so much. But you might notice that in order to create that sound, your throat almost has to create just a little slight bit of narrowing, or maybe just a little bit of tone to it in order to create the sound. So when we create that sound, I like to think of it as like, like if your breath were a river and you sort of build up the banks of the river, just like we do in this Ujjayi breath, then the flow is a little bit greater and it will last a little bit longer. It will go a little bit further. So we're going to try this again. Again, it might be a little awkward to try with your mouth closed at first, but with practice, it gets a little bit more accessible. So you can start with the mouth opened and then close it halfway through the breath. You'll notice that it kind of shifts and goes through the nasal passage a little bit. So practice it a couple of times. And I'm going to just keep my mouth closed. Now, what happens is that it becomes audible to you, but generally people around you can't hear it very well. So you probably can't hear mine, but see if you can hear your own audible ocean breath as you practice. Now, as you're continuing to practice, I'm going to talk a little bit more about it. It's very common to have access to this on the exhale, but for it to be a little bit more challenging as you inhale with the mouth closed. So if you can only do it on the exhale without any kind of unease or discomfort, then just practice it on the exhale. If it makes you feel uncomfortable at all, you're just going to stick with natural breath. So it's not a practice that's a make or break. But if you're finding that there's a little bit of comfort in the sound and you kind of are interested in doing it, I'm going to invite us into a little bit of breath work, but this time I'm going to make the sound even more audible for you. And you can also do this with natural breath too, even if you're not trying the Ujjayi. but we're going to cup our ears like they're seashells. And we'll just put our hands over our ears. So we're cupping our hands like seashells, pardon me, and then put that over your ears. And then we'll just breathe either with natural breath or ujjayi breath, and just pay attention to the sound and the feeling. And we'll just do this for a few moments. I'll bring you out of it in just a minute. So go ahead and close your eyes, cup your ears, and we'll go for it. Okay, now go ahead and release your hands from your ears. You can open your eyes, and hopefully that brought you into a little experience of your inner self. I think that that's a nice way to maybe think of it, is that we sort of tune out outward senses, and we can kind of pull our awareness into our own inner state. So it's a really nice practice to work with a little bit. So hopefully that was interesting, at least. Okay, so our next practice, I know we're kind of getting close to time, but this won't take very long, but I wanted to just talk to you a little bit about meditation and mindfulness practices, and just explain. I know that for many of us, when we're starting meditation, it can feel absolutely impossible to get beyond the thinking mind, or to even quiet the thinking mind. So it feels like a real chore to even sit down and be still, because it's almost makes it worse to think that there's, all of that noise going on all the time. So one of the ideas behind meditation is that we have, obviously we have thoughts that are going on all day long, but there's also this sort of witnessing presence to all of that. And we're going to do a practice here in a minute so that you can see what I'm talking about. But one way to think of it is that all of our thoughts are basically like the clouds in the sky. And the sky represents all of this space that we have all around our thoughts. It's sort of this witnessing presence. Sometimes it's referred to as consciousness, the witness. If you're a spiritual person, you might think of it as the God consciousness, or the witness of deity. So we're going to do a really brief practice, and then we're going to come back and talk a little bit more. So I'm going to have everybody close your eyes and wait very, very, very diligently for your very next thought. Just like you're watching for a mouse to jump out of a hole. So just watch for the very next thought. Okay, now I'm going to have you kind of sort of come back. Now, I'm curious to know if it took a little while for some of you for a thought to even enter, like you were waiting in anticipation and there was like nothing there for a little while. So that demonstrates that there is some sort of a witness that exists beyond the thoughts, outside of your thoughts. So you're not only governed by thought, because who's watching? Where were you in that process? If your thoughts subsided for a moment, then you became the witness for a moment. So this idea of meditation is a process of maybe slipping into a witnessing state as much as possible. So you might even notice that right now you can be in a witnessing state even while you're listening to me. So maybe you're paying attention to me. Maybe there are other distractions. You might have a few thoughts. You might be thinking about past or future or something else that's going on. But also there might be this sort of witnessing presence that you're actually paying attention to all of these things that are going on. You're becoming the sky while there's all of these clouds flittering through. Okay. So we're going to sit for a few moments and I'm going to kind of maybe guide you into a little meditation. It won't take very long, but I'm just mostly going to remind you to sort of stay as a witnessing presence. And as you begin your meditation practice, you'll probably feel like it's mostly thought with itty bitty moments of witness. But over time, those witnessing moments get bigger and bigger and more expansive. And eventually you can spend some time outside of thought as the witness, even if those thoughts still exist, but they're just a little bit quiet. So I'm going to have you go ahead and just sit up nice and tall. Close your eyes. And if it helps, maybe anchor into your body, the experience of being in your body. And you can do that by following your breath into your body. Now, as you settle into your space, as you settle into the moment, experience yourself as the witness of this experience. You might hear my voice. You might have physical sensation. You might have emotional sensation. All of those experiences sort of rise up out of the consciousness and then fall back down, almost like a wave in the ocean or a ripple on the water. Good. Now I'm going to slowly invite you back into the space that you're in. And even as you open your eyes, maybe just witness the space that you're in, witnessing the feeling of your body in space, witnessing the sound of my voice as it sort of rises up and then goes silent again. Notice your own breath as it sort of rises up and goes silent again, that there are these moments of peace and stillness in between every single in-breath and every single out breath. All right, everybody, I'm going to conclude with a little namaste. I'm going to bring my hands together in front of my heart. This is called Anjali Mudra. Namaste essentially means that the light in me honors and sees and respects the light in you. So namaste. And thank you for practicing with me. I'm happy to answer any questions, but I'm going to turn the time back over to our host.
Emily, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
That was phenomenal in so many ways, to be able to witness and actually physically participate in the process. It was great. Thank you. I made my confession at the beginning of the show that I have struggled a little bit with yoga in the past. And I'll admit, you opened my mind to some different ideas and concepts. I've heard the phrase chair yoga before. I've never actually seen it practiced, but as you said, it's very accessible, right? That could be available to anybody, and I appreciated that. I feel like, and I hope that many of our listeners were practicing along with you, and therefore haven't had an opportunity to maybe ask their questions yet because they were practicing, and that's fine. I actually have a question or two that I want to share, that I want to ask you, but as we're going along, if that sparks a question for you that are following along and listening, then don't hesitate to go ahead and drop that question in. My first question has to do with just the overall practice of yoga. Now, you walked us through kind of an abbreviated exercise practice, if you will, session of yoga. Do you recommend, or do people need to go to a yoga studio to practice, or are there other resources that are available to people, or what do you recommend as far as that goes?
Well, I guess it depends on what style of yoga you want to participate in. If you're really interested in the movement practice, which can be so therapeutic and so beneficial for injuries and working with the physical body, then I would recommend working with a professional so that you don't harm yourself, or there's a lot of stability that needs to be addressed before we start stretching and moving our bodies, and a professional will know how to offer that kind of stability. Now, yoga can be as easy as dropping into your breath, in which case it's accessible to everybody at any time. And then another practice that I highly recommend is to just spend time in nature. Get outside, go for a walk, notice the trees, listen to the birds, and not only to watch and observe with your thinking mind, but to see how it makes you feel, and to really, really pay attention to the feelings that come up, because there's a real healing practice that happens there as well.
You really focused in on an important aspect, and I think there's probably not time to delve more into it, but that idea of mindfulness and being present, we see and hear so much about the importance of that. And so I don't know if you can overstate that, but I know that yoga is very strongly connected to that concept of being present and being mindful. And as I said, you kind of walked us through a few of those things, those concepts. We did have a couple of questions that came in. The first one is, why is yoga sometimes considered a religious study, and does it have to be?
That's a really great question. Historically, yoga actually precedes a lot of the religions that it's often tied to. Yoga's history actually dates back to a time we can't really pinpoint when and where yoga was developed.
Yeah.
But then later on, Hinduism came in, and a lot of those practices were already present before Hinduism was sort of organized as a religion. And so because those practices existed, and that the people who started to kind of collect and draw into Hinduism, they were practicing yoga, it sort of got tied up into religious belief systems. It really ultimately is, it's often referred to as a science or philosophy more than religion. But again, there are a lot of ties to religion, but in no way do you have to practice or believe in any one religion. In fact, I would say that whatever you do believe in, adapt yoga to your current belief system and use it to further your experience. Add to the practices that already exist for you.
All right, I appreciate that. That's great advice. Here's another one that's kind of specific. Leslie says, I appreciated the fist claw stretch exercise for hands that you started out with. Do you have any other suggestions for keeping flexibility and reducing pain in your hands that are getting stiff from arthritis?
Yes. Oh my goodness. There's so many really, really great things you can do. One that I really love, I'm going to just kind of back up so you can see, is you take your hand and you just kind of take your thumb and gently, gently pull back. And then you do it to the next finger. And then you do it to the next. And so you go through each finger. You can do that. Another one that's really good, I'm going to back up even more so you can see, is you take your arms out to the side and then you just fold your thumb and then your finger and then the other finger and then the other finger, one at a time, all the way down. And then you drop it and then you fold it up this way. And then you unfold and unfold and unfold and unfold and unfold. And so that just creates a lot of really great mobility for the, we've got these muscles that go all the way down and into the forearm. So there's a lot, and then there's just anything you can do to keep the mobility in your joints, working with your fingers, keeping movement. We always just want to keep movement and flow in our bodies as much as possible.
Excellent. Great. One more question.
Mm-hmm.
And again, this is a little bit specific, but I think it's relevant. Lori says, I've sometimes been to yoga classes where the instructor does poses that feel uncomfortable. Is it best to try them or to just do something else instead?
I am a huge advocate of modifications and listening to your own body. I feel like every single pose can be adapted to meet specific bodies. It's so silly to think that we can all fit into one specific shape.
Yeah,
We cannot.
I can attest to that.
Yes, and no matter what your age. And so I feel like absolutely you should listen to your body, speak to the instructor, ask for modifications, ways to do the pose that fit your body instead of you trying to fit the shape of the pose. So
I like that. That makes a lot of sense. And I know that modification would be crucial to my successful practice of yoga.
It is for all of us. I use props all the time in my practice, and I've been doing this forever. So
awesome. Well, Emily, thank you so much for sharing your expertise and spending some time with us today. We wish you the very best in your studies and in your teaching, and hopefully we can run into each other down the road sometime.
My pleasure. Yes. Thank you so much for having me. And good luck, everybody. Keep practicing.
Wonderful. Thank you. And we want to thank you for joining us as well. If you enjoyed today's Living Your Best Life webinar, then we invite you to make sure that you invite your friends. We have an entire library of webinars that are available at seniorgames.net. And this one will also be available for your rewatching opportunity at seniorgames.net. We want to make sure that you are invited to join us next month, where we offer a very special show where we're going to feature Lonnie Pururi, and it is entitled Overcoming Stress and Anxiety to Achieve Clarity of Mind. And that is all going to take place on Wednesday, March 16th, 2022. We're going to start at noon and go to about 1 o'clock Mountain Time. So once again, Wednesday, March 16th, starting at noon Mountain Time, Overcoming Stress and Anxiety to Achieve Clarity of Mind. And until we meet again, get out there and live your best life. Thanks, everyone.